Welcome to On the Moneyline, a podcast by MMA Play 365. I'm Newsom and I'm here to break down UFC Paris, which is headlined by Ciryl Gane versus Tai Tuivasa in the UFC heavyweight division. This is a special moment for French MMA as it's the first time the UFC is going over to France, and obviously that's due to the sport of MMA now being fully legalized in France. So like I said, it's a special moment and I think it's going to be a fun event as well. But just before we get into the breakdowns, as always, there is a Bayes AI recap, and that was from 2 weeks ago, as that was the last event at UFC 278, which was headlined by the new UFC welterweight champion Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman. So make sure you check out that Bayes AI recap from the last event. And also, as there was no event last weekend, we did do a special episode podcast from an underdog perspective. We called it Underdog Hunting, and basically I just listed all of the underdogs that I've won this year, my ROI, and then I broke down 10 out of the 25 total cashed underdogs and just went a little bit more in depth of why I bet those underdogs and why I was happy that those cashed. So again, that's a special episode that's on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/MMA Play 365. So again, if you've got time, make sure you check that out. It's not too long, 15-20 minutes. And like I said, it's got some good insights to how I change things up in regards to betting underdogs, and like I said, the list of the full underdogs that I've cashed in 2022 so far. And now, the reason you're all here, we're getting into the breakdowns and predictions. Like I've already mentioned, UFC Paris headlined by Ciryl Gane versus Tai Tuivasa in the heavyweight division. And I think that you can't ignore that Tai Tuivasa is just gone on this beast streak. You know, I think a lot of people, including myself to an extent, had a lot of hype on Tai Tuivasa when he came into the UFC, and then we saw the takedown defense and the defensive grappling and thought maybe that hype was a little bit unjustified, and Tai Tuivasa will be in the mix in the heavyweight division in regards to a mid-tier fighter. But Tai Tuivasa's proven everybody wrong. He's gone on a win streak. He's even knocked out Derek Lewis as well, taking some of Derek Lewis's best shots. So I don't think you can ignore the run that he's been on. But I think Ciryl Gane's going to be one step too far for Tai Tuivasa, if I'm being honest. Listen, it's the heavyweight division, and if Tai Tuivasa catches Ciryl Gane with something hard and knocks him out, then I don't think anyone can be shocked. You know, look at the way he knocked out Derek Lewis, as I've mentioned, and a lot of other fighters that he's taken hard punches off and then returned and knocked them out. But I think it's going to take something a little bit more than that to beat Ciryl Gane. I think Tai Tuivasa is going to have to match Ciryl Gane skill for skill, technique for technique, and I think ultimately that's where the downfall is going to be. I think Ciryl Gane may have some holes in regards to defensive wrestling and grappling should fights get extended, as we saw in the Ngannou fight. I don't think anyone expected Ngannou to put a wrestle fuck on Ciryl Gane, but he did. So we did see maybe some holes there, but Tai Tuivasa isn't going to try and take Ciryl Gane down, and if he does, I don't think he's going to be successful, and I don't think his offensive BJJ is going to be enough to keep Ciryl Gane down either. So I think it's a fight that's ultimately going to play out on the feet, and like I said, unless Tai Tuivasa knocks him out, which there is a possibility of, I think that Ciryl Gane is just worlds apart in regards to the technical striking, the distance management, the speed, the volume that he'll put strikes together as well. And like I said, I just think there's levels to the striking here, and due to that being where the fight is going to be won and lost, where I believe the fight is going to be won and lost, I think it's a massive uphill challenge for Tai Tuivasa. I won't be completely shocked if he knocks him out, but at the same time, I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Ciryl Gane's going to put on an absolute clinic, a striking masterpiece, and either knock Tai Tuivasa out at some point during that striking masterpiece, or just take him to a decision and potentially win a 50-45. So I'm picking Ciryl Gane to win this fight. And in the next fight, the co-main event, this is a fun one in the middleweight division. We've got Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori. And I think this is a fight that's going to be very close. I think Robert Whittaker and Marvin Vettori, the only fighter that they've both really struggled against recently is Israel Adesanya, both twice as well. Obviously, Marvin Vettori's first one was quite a long time ago now. It was a split decision though, so fair play to Vettori. He took the fight on one judge's scorecards against Israel Adesanya, but like I said, that was a long time ago. But the thing is with this fight, I feel like everything's just close. Like the striking quality is close. You've got Robert Whittaker, in my opinion, who's the better mover, the better technical striker, but then you've got Marvin Vettori that's got cardio, durability, forward pressure, aggression. He'll get in the face of his opponent. He'll pop volume out as well. And that's the thing, like the volume's very very similar from strikes landed per minute. And the volume is also very similar for strikes absorbed per minute as well. Both fighters have got decent wrestling. Both fighters have got decent jiu-jitsu. I think Vettori's jiu-jitsu is better than Whittaker's. I think Whittaker's a slightly better wrestler. But the thing is, I don't think that Vettori's wrestling is that insignificant to Whittaker's that he can't take him down. So this is where I feel that Marvin Vettori might have that extra little bit from a path to victory perspective, because I think that it is going to be tough to take Whittaker down, but if Vettori does start being relentless with the takedowns, I do think he can get some top control time, and that's where I think the BJJ difference will show. I think the BJJ difference from Vettori's advantage to Whittaker's disadvantage is greater than that wrestling advantage that Robert Whittaker's got. The striking, I think, again, is going to be relatively close. So when the judges are looking at something, because I do think this fight could potentially go all 5 rounds, I don't think Vettori's got the knockout power to knock Whittaker out, not necessarily anyway. And I think Vettori, well, the fact that he's never been knocked out or submitted does tell you that this fight is likely going to go late. And I think if it does go to the judges' scorecards, I think that it could be a close fight. I think Vettori might have had that slight edge in regards to the offensive wrestling, potentially some top control time as well. So like I said, I do think it's going to be a close fight. I think if the fight does stay striking for a full 5 rounds or for extended periods of time, I think Whittaker will get the slight edge over Vettori. But when everything starts to get mixed up, like I said, it's a really close fight. It's a good fight at the top of the division. And I think that with Marvin Vettori, I think he's probably just a little bit hungry at this point as well. Whittaker's talking about potentially moving up to light heavyweight to see out the remainder of his career before he retires, that type of talk. So from a mentality perspective, maybe a slight edge to Vettori there as well. It's a really tough fight to call. I think it's going to be a close fight. I think it's going to be a good fight, a very technical fight. I think it's going to be a true mixed martial arts fight, seeing a little bit of everything in every discipline. But I am going to be siding with Marvin Vettori, who is the underdog, as I do believe he's got that slight advantage with the BJJ. So I'm picking Marvin Vettori to win this fight. In the next fight, we've got another interesting one. We've got Alessia Di Chirico versus Roman Kopylov. Talking of underdogs, this is another underdog that I like here as well. I think Roman Kopylov is going to have an advantage in this fight of where the fight is going to be won and lost. And I believe the fight is going to be won and lost in the striking department. I think Roman Kopylov does a good job of being patient, really slowing a fight down and being able to force a fight's pace to be at his own pace, and so he can dictate that pace, dictate the range, and therefore he can choose when he strikes, when to slide into range, when to slide out of range. Di Chirico's not a bad fighter. He's got skills, he's got qualities, but where Di Chirico is one of those types of fighters where he doesn't particularly excel in one specific area, but he's good in all of the areas. I think Kopylov is more of a specialist in regards to the striking, but his defensive wrestling and jiu-jitsu work, I think, is good enough to fend off that all-round game that Di Chirico is going to offer here. So I think because of that, the fight is more than likely going to be won and lost on the feet. I do think Kopylov is going to be controlling the range. I think he's going to be have his danger awareness at high levels as well. I think his fight IQ is going to be there. I think his speed's going to be good from a striking perspective as well. The fight is going to be close at moments. I do think Di Chirico is going to have his moments in this fight, but ultimately I feel like Kopylov is just going to do a much better job in the striking department. That's where I see the fight being won and lost. For that reason, I'm picking Roman Kopylov to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Nasrat Haqparast versus John Makdessi. And talking of fights being won and lost on the feet, this is absolutely a fight that I feel is going to be won and lost on the feet. Makdessi's got a kickboxing background. And listen, by the way, before I get into this breakdown, do not sleep on John Makdessi, because people have slept on him before. I've slept on him before, and he's come and just shown these veteran qualities in that kickboxing department. The fact that he is such a veteran striker, you can't put a price on that. Being experienced and being a veteran in the striking department in a fight that's going to be won and lost lightly on the feet is definitely something that you can't take for granted, because, like I say, John Makdessi just does a good job. His fight IQ is smart. But on the other side, you've got Nasrat Haqparast, and for as much of a veteran and as much experience as John Makdessi's got, what Nasrat Haqparast brings to the cage is speed, movement, combinations, youth, energy, hunger, and I feel that all that put together is going to cause a lot of problems for John Makdessi. John Makdessi is absolutely going to have his moments here. I've got no doubt about that, unless Nasrat Haqparast comes out and knocks him out early. But this is the thing, not only has Haqparast got a speed, movement, youth, hunger advantage, but he's also got a power advantage as well, putting punches together in combinations and exchanges. All these things put together, although, like I said, it's tough to really be confident against John Makdessi. But I feel you have to be in this spot because Nasrat Haqparast is, like I said, although he hasn't got the experience that John Makdessi's got, the veteranship, he's just got so many physical advantages here and the youth on his side as well. It's just difficult to see Nasrat Haqparast I don't think John Makdessi is going to knock Haqparast out, and if it goes to a decision, I just find it hard seeing Haqparast winning 2 out of 3 rounds at least against someone like Nasrat Haqparast. So for those reasons, I'm picking Nasrat Haqparast to win this fight. And in the next fight, this is going to be the best fight on the entire card, in my opinion. We've got Charles Jourdain versus Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood now making his second appearance up in the featherweight division after he's cut the weight cuts out. Obviously, he made that debut against Charles Rosa in London just a couple of months ago. So Nathaniel Wood, quick turnaround. And I feel like this is the fight that we thought we were going to get when we had Charles Jourdain versus Shane Burgos lined up. Obviously, Shane Burgos decided to wrestle and grapple. And I do genuinely think there is some holes in Charles Jourdain's game there. Like Burgos is a good grappler, but the fact that he was able to have that much success over Charles Jourdain, I think there's some holes there. But on the flip side, I think Charles Jourdain's a slightly better striker than what at least I thought anyway. So this is the fight I feel like we thought we were going to get. I think it's going to be a firefight. I think it's going to be explosive. I think we're going to see a lot of strikes landed. I think we're going to see a lot of strikes absorbed. I think we're going to see different areas of the body targeted, legs, body, head. And ultimately, like I say, I just think it's going to be a great fight. But because of the way this fight's going to play out, in my opinion, I feel like it can't be anything but close. But I also think that we could see a potential knockout at any moment. Now, from a finishing perspective, I do think that Charles Jourdain has got the finishing upside here, because with Nathaniel Wood coming up in weight, I think Charles Jourdain, he does hit hard, and I think he's going to hit harder than anybody Nathaniel Wood's ever faced before. So I think Wood's going to be taking harder shots than he's ever taken in his professional career. So we don't know how that's going to play out and if Nathaniel Wood's going to be able to take that sort of heavy damage. However, to counter that, Nathaniel Wood isn't going to have that tough weight cut. He isn't going to have the durability affected because of his dehydration and, like I said, everything that surrounds bad weight cuts. Not that I think he's ever struggled cutting weight, but it has taken a toll on his body. So the durability factor, I feel he's going to be more durable. And also, the one thing that comes with moving up in weight as well is I think Nathaniel Wood is going to have a big speed advantage in this fight, or at least some speed advantage. Charles Jourdain's not a slow fighter, but Nathaniel Wood was quick at bantamweight. Coming up to featherweight, I think he's going to be quick as well. So although I feel Jourdain's going to have the power advantage, I think Nathaniel Wood's going to have the speed advantage. And when it comes to these heavy exchanges and a ton of volume, that speed advantage I think is going to play a significant factor from that respect. So again, I think it's going to be a close fight. I think it's going to be a war. I think we're going to get to potentially the judges' scorecards where we're thinking, well, that was a great fight. The judges could score this either way. If there is a finish, I do feel like that is going to be on Jourdain's side. But if there's not a finish and it goes to the scorecards, then I think it's going to be a close fight. But I do like Nathaniel Wood in this fight. The other reason why I like Nathaniel Wood is in regards to just switching things up a little bit. Nathaniel Wood's wrestling's a little bit underrated. His jiu-jitsu's underrated as well. He can get really good positions on the mat. So where the striking's going to be close, I do think that Wood can use his speed to evade the power strikes and also potentially even use his wrestling and grappling. Now, you can't be too reliant on Wood wrestling and grappling here because he is predominantly a striker. But the fact that he does have that extra path to victory here over Charles Jourdain, who has showed holes when getting taken down and being controlled on the mat. I think he's been taken down 16 times in his UFC career. So there is something there for Nathaniel Wood should he decide to use it. If he does, then it could be a little bit of a more edged decision should the fight go to the scorecards. But if he doesn't, it's going to be a close fight regardless. I am going to have to side again with a fighter that's got that slightly extra path to victory in my opinion. So I'm picking Nathaniel Wood to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Dustin Stoltzfus versus the newcomer making his UFC debut, Abusupiyan Magomedov. Now, Magomedov, don't get it twisted, don't get it confused. Although it says he's from Germany, he's definitely going to have Russian heritage, having a surname of Magomedov. Now, with Russians normally come with beast wrestlers, relentless wrestlers, and although Magomedov does have a decent wrestling game, decent topside game, and a decent jiu-jitsu game as well, he isn't the exact relentless type of wrestler that you'd expect from like a Khabib or an Islam Makhachev. So he does have a good striking game as well. Not that Khabib and Islam don't, by the way, but he's more of an all-round type of fighter. His striking's dangerous, he's calm, he's patient, he'll throw a little bit of everything, he'll throw kicks to the legs, body, head, and he'll also put together some combinations as well. My only slight critique from that perspective is his volume can be a little bit low at times. He can be a little bit too patient, where he becomes a little bit inactive. But when he does go, he's got power behind his strikes, and he can be aggressive and force his opponent back. And like I said, he's got a decent wrestling game also. Once he gets on top, he's got some decent control. He's got submissions also, so when opponents try and take him down, he'll instantly try and wrap up a guillotine just to threaten a submission, which he has finished, by the way, in previous fights. But if the submission isn't there for him, he'll just use it to defend the takedown and get back up to his feet. However, we have also seen him taken down, and he can get a little bit stuck on his back. And this is where Dustin Stoltzfus comes in, because Stoltzfus' game, although he's okay on the feet, he does like to get takedowns, get his opponents down to the mat. But I don't think he's going to get easy takedowns in this fight. I think Magomedov does do a good enough job in defending the takedowns to prevent Stoltzfus from really getting him down often and being able to get top control time. And I think that Stoltzfus could potentially get taken down himself. And this is where I think it's a difficult fight for Stoltzfus, because I feel that Magomedov has got the edge in the striking. I think his defensive work, wrestling and grappling, is better than the offensive work of the wrestling and grappling of Stoltzfus. And ultimately, that's going to lead to Magomedov just being able to control that fight a little bit better. And for those reasons, I'm picking Abusupiyan Magomedov to win this fight. And in the next fight, this should be a fun one as well. We've got Firas Ziam versus another newcomer, Michal Figlak, one half of the Figlak brothers. I've been watching the Figlak brothers, Michal and Mateusz, in Cage Warriors for quite a while, since they both made the debuts. I really like them both. I think they're both solid fighters. I think it's probably only a matter of time before we see Mateusz in the UFC as well. But here we've got Mike Figlak. And Mike Figlak's a fighter that is just super aggressive. He comes forward, likes to get in the face of his opponents. He'll throw strikes, he'll land power, he'll look for takedowns. He's got good top control time. He can land ground and pound in top control, threaten submissions. And I feel like he's a very well-rounded, polished fighter, even though he's only 8-0 and he is relatively early into his MMA career. I think that he's going to pose a lot of problems for a lot of fighters in this division, especially as he develops moving forwards as well. I think he's going to be a problem. And against Firas Ziam here, I think it's a good fight to see exactly where Figlak's at, because Firas Ziam's got a ton of kickboxing experience, even though he's young himself. And Firas Ziam, he can have really good moments in his fights. Like, you look at his fight against Luigi Vendramini, and he absolutely controlled that fight, but he's not totally dangerous. Like, he will point fight, he will throw strikes out there, jab away, straight 1-2s, straight kicks, everything he likes straight down the middle. And I think Figlak's definitely got to be wary of that. But I also think Figlak's aggression and the way he can cut angles and hook around the outside as well, I feel that he's going to be able to find a way around the straight shots of Firas Ziam. But the one area that I'm very concerned with Firas, in fact, there's two areas I'm concerned with Firas Ziam. The first area is the takedowns. I think Figlak can take him down. I think that if Figlak gets him settled, I think Firas Ziam can be a little bit too patient off his back, run the clock down. He did the same thing against Terence McKinney. He didn't really threaten too much, or there wasn't that urgency to stand back up to his feet. So that's problem number one for Ziam. Problem number two, and you saw this in the Luigi Vendramini fight, and Vendramini almost had Firas Ziam at least on the way out of there, the start of the on the way out of there. And the reason being is because Luigi Vendramini was a little patient early in the fight for the first two rounds. Firas Ziam was controlling the pace, the range, he got into his striking flow. But once Vendramini just stood his ground, went forward and started putting the pressure on Ziam, Ziam has got that tall man defense where he will leave his chin in the air, where he will walk back in straight lines, and you can get at him if you're pressing forward aggressively, positively. And I think that describes Michal Figlak as well. So I think Figlak will be able to bring those defensive flaws out of Ziam, but just earlier in this fight than what Luigi Vendramini did. Then you add in the wrestling and the potential grappling as well. I think that Mike Figlak's got a fight where he's going to absolutely be tested, a fight that he's going to be facing the best opponent he's ever faced in his career, but a fight that I think he's going to shine in. So I'm picking Michael Figlak to win this fight. In the next fight, we've got Nassourdine Imavov versus Joaquin Buckley. Now, this is going to be a fun fight as well. And again, I think it's going to be a point fighter versus... Well, I think it's a little bit actually disrespectful calling Imavov a point fighter after, what he did against Heinisch. But he is more of a point fighter than a Joaquin Buckley that's going to come forward and look to take your head off. Now, I do think the line is off, by the way. I think that the line's way too wide. I think that Nassourdine Imavov is slightly too big of a favourite. But I do understand why he's the favourite at the same time as well. I think Imavov... From a technical perspective, he's got it all. He's got seriously good striking. He'll mix between good straight attacks. He'll mix between those straight attacks and hooks. He'll attack the legs, the body, the head. He's also got a sneaky underrated ground game as well, both offensively and he's okay defensively. Now, I don't think that this fight is going to have any extended periods of time on the mat, even if Imavov did want to take down Buckley. I think Buckley's aggression, the power that he poses, and his athleticism is going to prove a little bit too much for Imavov to find good entries into takedown. So I think it's a fight that is going to take place on the feet. But the thing is, Imavov has dealt with a guy like Buckley before, and I feel that it's going to be that type of fight again. I'm talking about the Phil Horst fight, by the way. I feel like it's going to be that type of fight again where Imavov's going to get hit hard. He might be rocked at some points, but I think the better level, the better quality of striking is going to show through in this fight, in a fight that is going to play out predominantly on the feet. Unless Buckley knocks Imavov out, which, by the way, there's a good possibility of that happening. He does have that serious explosive striking. Unless that knockout happens, I think Imavov is just going to be able to put loads of volume on Buckley. I think he's going to outstrike him. I think we're going to see a big difference in the quality of striking. And I think Imavov potentially late as well has got the chance to potentially put Buckley out as well. And if he doesn't put Buckley out, and if the fight does go to a decision, then I think Imavov's going to win at least 2 out of the 3 rounds. For that reason, I'm picking Nassourdine Imavov to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Benoit Saint-Denis versus the newcomer Gabriel Miranda. And I think this is a horrific matchup for Miranda, if I'm being honest. I think Benoit Saint-Denis has got his striking improved in his last fight as well. So I think he's definitely got the striking advantage. But where Miranda really likes to shine in his fights is by getting takedowns, getting that top control time. But I've seen him on top of his opponents, and although he can look a little dangerous, I think he looks a little desperate at times too, trying to rush the submissions, trying to be submission over position, but also rushing the transitions from position to position as well. And I think he can make a lot of mistakes. Now, against Benoit Saint-Denis, he is a very good grappler. And I just don't think, even if Miranda gets on top of Benoit Saint-Denis, I just don't think he's going to be able to do anything on top of him unless Benoit Saint-Denis makes a ridiculous mistake on the mat, which I don't think he will. But I'm more inclined to say it's going to be the other way around. I think it's going to be Saint-Denis on top of Miranda. I think Miranda's going to probably be that type of fighter that's going to throw up arm bars and triangles, and it's not going to happen, and he's going to run the clock down, and Benoit Saint-Denis is going to be landing ground and pound, getting top control time, submission hunting himself, and I feel like it's going to be a theme throughout the fight. I think Benoit Saint-Denis is the better striker. I think that he's going to be able to... I think he's the better wrestler, and I think he's the better topside grappler, and all those things are going to matter here. And I think it could potentially be a little bit tricky at times for Benoit Saint-Denis, if I'm being kind, but ultimately I think he's got the beating of Gabriel Miranda everywhere. So for those reasons, I'm picking Benoit Saint-Denis to win this fight. And in the next fight, we've got Khalid Taha versus the newcomer coming from the Dana White Contender Series, Cristian Quinones. And I think this is going to be a close fight. I think it's a fight that, again, is going to be won and lost on the feet. I think if any fighter's going to look for takedowns, it's more likely to be Taha, who does have a decent takedown game. He has had a submission in his career as well, and against a good jiu-jitsu fighter also. So I think Khalid Taha has got a wrestling and grappling advantage in this fight. On the feet, I think it's going to be really close because you've got the tall, long striking of Quinones against Taha, who's going to be a little bit shorter, a little bit more of a ball explosive, trying to get into that range. But I think Taha does a good job of doing that. I think that's a predominant a predominant trait of his style in regards to knowing he's got to get into that range, he's got to explode into range with the big punches, and then he can start exchanging inside boxing range where he will then have advantages. And then if it isn't going his way, he can then level change into a takedown. Like that type of fight for me is, like I said, where I believe Khalid Taha has really adapted his game over time, and I feel that he does a good job of in that type of style. So for that reason, I do think that although Quinones is going to have moments in this fight, in my opinion, I feel like he's probably going to have to get Taha out of there at some point, because I think Taha will grow into this fight. I think once he's got his reads down, he's been in there against a better level of competition, and he's got way more UFC experience at the highest level as well. And all those things are going to play a factor. So I think stylistically, slightly favours Taha, although if he does get knocked out, then obviously that's going to be the end of it. But I think Taha's durable enough. I think he's got an experience advantage. He's fought the better level of opposition, competition. So for those reasons, I'm picking Khalid Taha to win this fight. And in the next fight, another newcomer, Ailin Perez versus Stephanie Egger. Stephanie Egger stepping in here on short notice. And the line is really wide, in my opinion, here. Although I do, again, think that Stephanie Egger is rightfully favoured. I think the line should be much closer. Let's not forget Perez, her previous opponent that pulled out. Perez was like a -300, -350 favourite over her, and then now Stephanie Eggers took that line from Perez. Like I say, I get why Perez is the underdog. I get why Eggers the favourite. I just think it's slightly too wide. But Ailin Perez bases her game on takedowns, on grappling, and that's where I think she's going to be at a loss in this fight, because I think although her wrestling offense is better than the offensive wrestling of Egger, Egger uses a different style of takedown. She uses more of a judo approach. Her background is judo as well, and I think that's where the difference is going to be. I think even when Perez is going to be very heavy on the offensive takedowns, I think that someone like Egger is going to be able to use that forward pressure and the weight of Perez's takedowns against her to hip toss and get a fight down to the mat. And on top, I think Egger's just going to show a different level of grappling to what Perez A has dealt with before, and B even shown herself. I think Egger's definitely the better grappler here. On the feet strike, and I actually think Perez has probably got the slight edge in the striking. It's just he always goes to this wrestling and grappling game plan, and like I said, I think that's going to be her undoing in this fight. Even if she's doing well with the striking, I think that she'll go into autopilot, shoot a takedown, and that's where I think the distance is going to be closed enough for Egger to be able to get her own takedowns, and that's where the fight is likely going to be won and lost, in my opinion. For those reasons, I'm picking Stephanie Egger to win this fight. And in the last breakdown of this podcast, we've got a new fight that got added not so long ago against two newcomers as well. We've got William Gomis versus Jarno Errens. And again, this is a fight that's more than likely going to be won and lost on the feet. William Gomis looks like he's got that real typical Muay Thai style where it's slow, it's plodding, southpaw stance, reactive to strikes. As soon as a fighter gets close to him, he'll try and clinch up with him, force him against the cage, land knees, land elbows. And then he'll also try and take fights down to the mat as well. He's got decent wrestling. But then you've got Jarno Errens on the other side. He comes from that Dutch kickboxing background, so there is a very slight difference between the kickboxing and the Muay Thai. The kickboxing background, he'll be a little bit more active, he'll look to strike at range, and I think that it's going to cause a really good fight with both fighters' styles, and I think it's going to be a really close fight as well. Jarno Errens has also got decent offensive jiu-jitsu as well if he can get fights down to the mat. You know, he can get a back take. We saw that in his last fight on Brave. You know, he took his opponent's back, a Russian, I believe, as well. And he was able to control the fight from that back position. But in that first round in that fight, he was taken down and he got a little bit stuck on his back as well. So that's where Jarno Errens is a real bit of hit and miss in regards to that jiu-jitsu. Offensive jiu-jitsu seems to be way more advanced than the defensive jiu-jitsu. And we've not seen too much of William Gomis on his back, but we have seen him in a top position and he can maintain a good top position. So this is where, although I can't really put my finger on William Gomis, there is something there. I'm not too sure. Maybe it's how patient he is, and potentially he just lets rounds run away a little bit too much than I'd like to see. But aside from that, he is dangerous, he is sharp, he is aggressive, he is athletic. And I do think if he looks for takedowns here, I think that's an advantage as well. He's probably got the slight advantage with the striking because of that aggression and pressure also. So although the fight's going to be close, I think it's going to be a firefighter for the most part as well. I do like William Gomis because I feel like he's slightly better in more ranges, he's more athletic, and if he does get those takedowns, I think his topside jiu-jitsu is way better than the defensive jiu-jitsu of Jarno Errens. So for those reasons, I'm picking William Gomis to win this fight. And that's all for this episode of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. I always appreciate the likes to the video, the subscriptions to the MMA Play 365 channel too. If you are listening and you haven't subscribed, please just hit that subscribe button. It really helps us a lot over here at MMA Play 365. We're trying to get to the 1,000 subscribers mark. So again, if you are listening and haven't subscribed, please do us a favor and just hit that subscribe button, turn your notifications on as well. You'll get a notification to your emails and to your YouTube app every time we upload and post a video. Thank you for listening. I'm Newsome. We'll see you again next week.